Today I was making a flower hug, and there are several steps to making the flower hug, but in the one where I was putting the label in the back of the flower hug, I had a little trouble. So first of all, let me show you again what flower hugs are. Flower hugs are small wall quilts. They look pretty much like this: hexagon flower, leaves, stems. And then I put on the back a Thinking of You label. This one says, "This wall hug has been made expressly for you to bring you a bit of joy and cheerfulness. Made by," and the date. I send these to friends who are having problems, maybe the death of a loved one, maybe they're fighting cancer, and so this is something that I can fold up and stick it in a mailer and send off all the way anywhere in the U.S. So I make them quite often, and I had a problem today. When you're making a flower hug, you need to make the top just like you would, and there are videos on this, and there's directions in my pattern which I probably will show at the end of this video. But the flower hug, the top looks basically like this. And so I pick a flower, glue it down, glue this down. These leaves have interfacing that's fusible on the back, so just fuse those down, and then I will be stitching them down when I get the batting and everything together. This will be the outside binding. And on the back, I usually put that label. You can use a small label, and on my website I have a PDF that you can copy that says the Thinking of You label. I think there might also be one. If not, you can check with me and I can put one on. But this is a little longer label. It takes up a whole page. So today I decided I would use this one. That's fine. When I use this one, I can do two at once. Well, the way I do them is I put the paper on, I put my backing fabric, which is usually cotton or muslin, plain, but I put that fabric on top of a piece of freezer paper. And the freezer paper, first of all, before I did this, I stuck my iron, I stuck it to a piece of freezer paper with a hot iron, dry hot iron. And then I cut the fabric out exactly along the edge of the freezer paper. I press it on both sides because I'm going to put it through my printer. In the printer, I have either this one or this one. Today I used this one, and have it set to print on the fabric side. Now every printer is a little bit different, so you have to know your printer, but an inkjet printer will print these fairly easily unless you maybe get the settings wrong. I write on the back of my freezer paper what settings I need to use on my printer. And so this paper says used once, because I used it for this today. Print using photo paper matte settings, and in big letters, draft. If you try to use something like best print, it seems like it takes it, and sometimes your printer could pull it up in there and make a big old mess. But if you use draft, it comes through a little faster. At least it did on mine. Then when you get it out of the printer, you can pull the freezer paper off, and I usually figure out how much I need to put on each side of the label. Here, I can show you better looking at it front ways. Here's the top, the bottom, and then I put a side section. Just sew it on, and I press those seams open so that they'll lay nice and flat on the back of the quilt. And then later today, I will put batting on this. Now this is extra big. I always make my backs extra extra big. I'm going to put some batting on there and then see how much bigger that is, because I want to have plenty of room to maneuver this quilt in my sewing machine to do the free motion quilting. And when I quilt, I always use a blanket stitch right around the flowers. I use a blanket stitch around the leaves. And since you have your batting and your backing on the back, you've got a little stability there. So you don't need to worry about anything coming up, like pulling up the threads. And then I use a green thread or a matching thread to the stem, put my feed dogs down, and just use my free motion foot to just go back and forth, you know, on both outer edges. And then when I quilt around, usually I quilt around the insides here, just around there. I quilt on next to the seams here on the leaves. And when I have that all finished, then I free motion all of the outside. And finally, I add some buttons, and I add beads, and there's, oh well, before I add buttons and beads, I have to put on the binding, and I'm hoping that this will be enough binding to go around this when it's trimmed up and finished. So, then I put on the beads, and then I can send it off. Oh, after I sign my name on the back, sign my name and the date. So, I thought if you're worried or if you're wondering how to do labels, quilt labels, this is not hard to do. And if you have an inkjet printer, probably you can make this, make either the longer label or the short label, make 2 of them. And if you have any other questions, just let me know. You can email me at prestoavenuedesigns.com. Thanks.